Imagine this. You wake up one morning and the person who was lying next to you just hours ago has vanished without a trace. No note, no explanation, no goodbye, just an empty space where they once were. Now, fast forward 5 years, and you're a successful CEO living a life that seems perfect on the surface. But then, out of nowhere, you come face to face with 2 children who look exactly like you. Your world shatters in an instant. Who are these kids? Where did they come from? And most importantly, where is she, the woman who disappeared without a word all those years ago? This is not just a story about love, loss, and secrets. It's a story about how the past can come crashing back into your life when you least expect it. If you've ever wondered how one night can change everything, or how the choices we make can haunt us for years, then you're in the right place. Because today, we're diving deep into a tale that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love, family, and the power of secret. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your life was on track, only to have something or someone completely derail it? That's exactly what happened to our protagonist, a man who thought he had it all, wealth, power, and a life that many could only dream of. But beneath the surface, there was always a void, a lingering question that he could never quite shake. And then, in one shocking moment, that question was answered in a way he never could have imagined. This story isn't just about him, though. It's about her, the woman who vanished after one unforgettable night. Who was she? Why did she leave? And what secrets was she hiding? These are the questions that will keep you hooked, and by the end of this video, you'll have the answers you've been searching for. But be warned, once you start watching, you won't be able to stop. Now I know what you're thinking. Why should I care about this story? What makes it different from all the other dramas out there? Well, let me tell you, this isn't just another tale of love and loss. This is a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about relationships, about trust, and about the lengths people will go to protect the ones they love. It's a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat, wondering what's going to happen next. And it's a story that will stay with you long after the video ends. So, if you're ready to dive into a world of mystery, intrigue, and heart-stopping twists, then keep watching, because this is one story you won't want to miss. Let's set the scene. It's a cold, rainy night in New York City. The kind of night where the city feels alive, pulsing with energy and possibility. Our protagonist, let's call him Daniel, is a young, ambitious man with dreams of making it big. He's at a high-profile party, rubbing elbows with the city's elite, when he sees her. She's beautiful, mysterious, and unlike anyone he's ever met before. They share a connection that's instant and electric, and before the night is over, they find themselves alone together, lost in each other's arms. But when Daniel wakes up the next morning, she's gone. No note, no explanation, no trace of her existence. It's as if she was never there at all. Fast forward 5 years, and Daniel is now the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. He's successful, powerful, and seemingly untouchable. But beneath the surface, he's haunted by the memory of that night. He's tried to move on, tried to forget, but the mystery of her disappearance has always lingered in the back of his mind. And then, one day, everything changes. He's at a charity event, shaking hands and making small talk, when he sees them, 2 children, a boy and a girl, who look exactly like him. His heart stops. His mind races. Who are these kids? And how are they connected to the woman who vanished all those years ago? This is where the story really begins. Because as Daniel digs deeper, he uncovers secrets that will change his life forever. Secrets about the woman he thought he knew, secrets about his own past, and secrets that will force him to confront the truth about who he really is. But here's the thing, the more he learns, the more questions he has. And the more questions he has, the more dangerous things become. Because there are people out there who will do anything to keep the truth hidden. People who will stop at nothing to protect their own secrets. And as Daniel gets closer to the truth, he realizes that he's not just fighting for answers, he's fighting for his life. So, what happens next? Who is the woman who vanished after one night? And how are these two children connected to Daniel? Well, that's what we're here to find out. But before we go any further, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a moment in your life where everything changed in an instant? A moment where you realized that nothing would ever be the same again? That's exactly where Daniel is right now. And as we follow him on this journey, we're going to uncover the truth together. We're going to piece together the clues, unravel the mystery, and discover the shocking reality behind this story. But be warned, this is not a story for the faint of heart. This is a story that will challenge everything you think you know about love, family, and the power of secrets. Now, I know you're probably wondering how this story ends. And trust me, I get it. When you're watching a story like this, you want answers. You want to know what happens next. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have those answers. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about what happened. It's a story about why it happened. It's a story about the choices we make, the secrets we keep, and the consequences that come with them. And as we dive deeper into this tale, you're going to see how all of these elements come together to create a story that's as heartbreaking as it is thrilling. So, are you ready to find out the truth? Are you ready to uncover the secrets that have been hidden for so long? Then keep watching, because this is one story you won't want to miss. And remember, the answers you're looking for are just ahead. But be prepared, once you know the truth, there's no going back. So, sit back, relax, and get ready for a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat from beginning to end. Because this is the story of a man who thought he had it all, only to discover that the past was never really behind him. And it's the story of a woman who vanished after one night, leaving behind a mystery that would take years to unravel. But most of all, it's a story about love, loss, and the power of secrets. And it's a story that will stay with you long after the video ends. But before we go any further, let me leave you with this. What would you do if you were in Daniel's shoes? If you were faced with a mystery that could change your life forever, would you keep digging, even if it meant risking everything? Or would you walk away, leaving the past buried where it belongs? That's the question at the heart of this story. And as we dive deeper into the mystery, you're going to see how Daniel's choices shape his destiny. But for now, all you need to know is this. The truth is out there, and it's closer than you think. So, stay tuned, because the next part of this story is about to take you on a journey you'll never forget. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Daniel's life had always been a series of calculated moves, each step meticulously planned to bring him closer to his goals. Growing up in a modest neighborhood in Chicago, he had learned early on that success wasn't handed to anyone, it was earned. His father, a factory worker, and his mother, a schoolteacher, had instilled in him the value of hard work and perseverance. But they had also taught him something else, that life was unpredictable, and no matter how much you planned, there were always forces beyond your control. Little did he know, those words would come back to haunt him in ways he could never have imagined. By the time he was in his early 30s, Daniel had built an empire. His tech company, Innovitex, was a household name, and he was celebrated as one of the most visionary CEOs of his generation. But despite the accolades and the wealth, there was a part of him that always felt incomplete. A part that had been left behind on that rainy night in New York, when she disappeared without a trace. Her name was Elena. At least that's what she had told him. But as Daniel would later discover, even her name was a mystery. She had appeared out of nowhere that night, a radiant figure in a sea of faces, and from the moment their eyes met, he felt a connection that was impossible to ignore. They had talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams, and for the first time in his life, Daniel felt like he had met someone who truly understood him. But when he woke up the next morning, she was gone. No note, no phone number, no way to contact her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. At first, he tried to convince himself that it was just a one-night stand, that she had moved on, and so should he. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. There was something about Elena that had stayed with him, something he couldn't quite put into words. And now, 5 years later, that something had come back to life in the form of two children who looked exactly like him. The charity event where Daniel first saw the children was one of those high-profile gatherings where the city's elite came together to show off their wealth and generosity. Daniel had always hated these events, but as the face of Innovatex, he didn't have much of a choice. He was making his rounds, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries when he saw them. A boy and a girl, no more than 4 or 5 years old, standing near the entrance. They were dressed in matching outfits, their faces lit up with the kind of innocence that only children possess. But it wasn't their clothes or their smiles that caught Daniel's attention. It was their eyes. They were his eyes. The same shade of blue, the same shape, the same intensity. His heart skipped a beat as he stared at them, his mind racing with questions. Who are these kids? And why did they look so much like him? Before he could approach them, a woman stepped forward and took their hands, leading them away. Daniel tried to follow, but the crowd was too thick, and by the time he made it to the entrance, they were gone. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying the events of the evening over and over again. Who was the woman who had taken the children? Was she their mother? And if so, was she also Elena? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He had spent years trying to forget about Elena, trying to convince himself that she was just a fleeting moment in his past. But now it seemed like she was back, and she had brought with her a secret that could change everything. The next morning, Daniel called his assistant and asked her to pull up the guest list from the charity event. He needed to find out who those children were, and more importantly, who their mother was. But as he scrolled through the list, he realized that it was incomplete. Several names were missing, including the woman and the children. It was as if they had never been there at all. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel became obsessed with finding out the truth. He hired a private investigator, a former detective named Marcus, who had a reputation for solving cases that others couldn't. Marcus was a no-nonsense kind of guy, with a sharp mind and a keen eye for detail. He listened carefully as Daniel recounted the story of Elena and the children, his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. "This isn't going to be easy," Marcus said when Daniel was finished. "If this woman doesn't want to be found, she's probably gone to great lengths to cover her tracks. But if there's one thing I've learned in this line of work, it's that everyone leaves a trail. We just have to find it." And so, the investigation began. Marcus started by digging into Daniel's past, looking for any clues that might lead them to Elena. He interviewed old friends, colleagues, and even Daniel's ex-girlfriends, but no one seemed to know anything about her. It was as if she had appeared out of thin air that night in New York and then disappeared just as quickly. Meanwhile, Daniel's personal life was starting to unravel. His fiancée, Claire, had noticed the change in him. She had always admired his drive and ambition, but lately he had become distant and preoccupied. She tried to talk to him about it, but he brushed her off, telling her it was just work stress. But Claire wasn't fooled. She could sense that something was wrong, something deeper than just work. And then, one night, she found the file. It was lying on Daniel's desk, a folder filled with notes and photographs from Marcus's investigation. Claire's heart sank as she flipped through the pages, her mind racing with questions. Who was Elena? And why was Daniel so obsessed with finding her? Confronted with the truth, Daniel had no choice but to come clean. He told Claire everything, from the night he met Elena to the moment he saw the children at the charity event. Claire listened in silence, her face a mask of emotions. When he was finished, she took a deep breath and said, "I need some time to think." And with that, she walked out the door, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts. As the investigation continued, Marcus uncovered a series of clues that led them closer to the truth. They discovered that Elena had been living under a false identity, moving from city to city, always staying one step ahead of anyone who might be looking for her. But why? What was she running from? And why had she left Daniel without a word? The answers to these questions were still out of reach, but Marcus was determined to find them. Meanwhile, Daniel's professional life was also starting to feel the strain. The board of directors at Innovatex had begun to question his leadership, citing his recent erratic behavior and lack of focus. Rumors were swirling, and Daniel knew that if he didn't get his act together soon, he could lose everything he had worked so hard to build. But how could he focus on work when his personal life was falling apart? How could he lead a company when he couldn't even lead his own life? And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more complicated, a new piece of the puzzle fell into place. Marcus received a tip from an anonymous source, claiming that Elena had been seen in a small town in upstate New York. Daniel's heart raced as he listened to Marcus's report. Could it really be her? Was she finally within reach? Without hesitation, Daniel packed a bag and set off for the town, his mind filled with a mix of hope and fear. What would he say to her if he found her? How would she react? And what about the children? Were they really his? As he drove through the winding roads of upstate New York, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the brink of something life-changing. But little did he know, the truth was far more complicated and far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The town was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Daniel checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town, his mind racing with questions. Where should he start looking? How could he find Elena in a place where she clearly didn't want to be found? As he walked through the town, he couldn't help but feel like he was being watched. Everywhere he went, people seemed to stare at him, their eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion. It was as if they knew why he was there, even though he hadn't said a word. And then, just as he was about to give up hope, he saw her. She was standing in the doorway of a small cafe, her back turned to him, but he would have recognized her anywhere. It was Elena. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached her, his mind filled with 1,000 questions. But before he could say a word, she turned around and the look in her eyes stopped him in his tracks. It wasn't the look of someone who was happy to see him. It was the look of someone who was terrified. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't be here." And with that, she turned and ran, disappearing into the crowd before he could stop her. Daniel stood there, frozen in place, his mind racing with questions. Why had she run? What was she afraid of? And most importantly, what was she hiding? As he walked back to his motel, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was getting closer to the truth. But he also knew that the closer he got, the more dangerous things would become. Because there were forces at work here, forces that didn't want the truth to come out. And if Daniel wasn't careful, he could end up paying the ultimate price. But for now, all he could do was wait. Wait and wonder what would happen next. Because one thing was certain, the story of Elena and the children was far from over. And the answers he was searching for were closer than he thought. But at what cost? Only time would tell. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the quiet street, his mind racing as he replayed the moment Elena had fled. Her fear was palpable, etched into every line of her face, and it left him with more questions than answers. Why was she so afraid? What or who was she running from? The town, which had seemed quaint and peaceful just moments ago, now felt like a labyrinth of secrets, each corner hiding a piece of the puzzle he was desperate to solve. He returned to the motel, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind, and spent the night poring over the notes Marcus had sent him. The private investigator had uncovered fragments of Elena's past, a trail of aliases, abandoned apartments, and cryptic bank transactions, but nothing that explained why she had disappeared or why she was living in hiding. The more Daniel dug, the more he realized that Elena wasn't just running from him. She was running from something far more dangerous. The next morning, Daniel decided to visit the cafe where he had seen Elena. The place was small and cozy, with the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. He took a seat by the window, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of her. The waitress, a friendly woman in her 50s, approached him with a warm smile. "What can I get you, hon?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "Actually, I'm looking for someone. A woman named Elena. She was here yesterday. Do you know her?" The waitress's smile faltered, and she glanced around nervously before leaning in closer. "Listen, I don't know who you are or what you want with her. but you need to be careful. People around here don't take kindly to strangers asking too many questions. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Is she in trouble? The waitress shook her head, her expression grim. I've said too much already. Just be careful, okay? She walked away before he could press further, leaving Daniel with a sinking feeling in his chest. The town's secrets were deeper than he had imagined, and Elena was at the center of it all. As the days passed, Daniel's search for Elena grew more desperate. He spent hours walking the streets, asking questions, and following leads, but every door seemed to slam shut in his face. The townspeople were tight-lipped, their wary glances and hushed whispers only adding to the growing sense of unease. Meanwhile, Marcus called with an update that sent a chill down Daniel's spine. I've been digging into Elena's past, and I found something you need to see, Marcus said, his voice tense. She's connected to a powerful family, one with a lot of influence and a lot of enemies. If she's hiding from them, it's for a good reason. You need to tread carefully, Daniel. These people don't play games. Daniel's mind raced as he processed the information. Who was Elena really? And what had she gotten herself and him into? The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but the picture they formed was more terrifying than he could have imagined. Back in the city, Claire was struggling with her own turmoil. She had tried to give Daniel space, hoping he would come to his senses, but the distance between them only seemed to grow. She couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship was hanging by a thread, and the more she thought about Elena and the children, the more she questioned everything she thought she knew about Daniel. One evening, as she sat alone in their apartment, she decided to do some digging of her own. She logged into Daniel's computer, her hands trembling as she searched through his files. What she found left her stunned. There were photos of Elena, documents detailing Marcus's investigation, and a series of emails between Daniel and a mysterious contact who seemed to know more about Elena's whereabouts than anyone else. Claire's heart pounded as she read through the messages, her mind reeling with questions. Who was this person? And why were they helping Daniel? Before she could delve deeper, she heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. Daniel was home. The tension between them was palpable as Daniel walked into the room, his face drawn and weary. Claire stood up, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. We need to talk, she said, holding up the printed emails. What is this, Daniel? Who are you really looking for? And why are you keeping all of this from me? Daniel's shoulders slumped as he realized there was no point in hiding the truth anymore. He told Claire everything about Elena, the children, and the dangerous web of secrets he had stumbled into. Claire listened in silence, her emotions shifting from anger to disbelief to fear. Do you realize what you're risking? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Your career, your life, us. Is she really worth all of this? Daniel didn't have an answer. All he knew was that he couldn't stop now, not when he was so close to the truth. Meanwhile, in the small town, Elena was facing her own demons. She had spent years running, always looking over her shoulder, always afraid of being found. But now, with Daniel so close, she knew she couldn't run anymore. She had made a choice 5 years ago, a choice that had cost her everything, and she had vowed to protect the children at all costs. But as she watched Daniel from the shadows, she realized that he deserved to know the truth even if it destroyed them both. One night, as Daniel sat alone in his motel room, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Elena standing there, her face pale and her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. But you have to promise me one thing. No matter what you hear, you have to protect the children. They're the only thing that matters now. Daniel nodded, his heart pounding as he stepped aside to let her in. The moment he had been waiting for was finally here, but as Elena began to speak, he realized that the truth was far more shocking than he had ever imagined. Elena's story unfolded like a nightmare, each word more chilling than the last. She revealed that she had been forced into hiding by a powerful family with ties to organized crime. They had targeted her after she uncovered a secret that could destroy them, and she had been on the run ever since. The children, she confessed, were indeed Daniel's conceived during their one night together, but she had kept them hidden to protect them from the same danger that had haunted her. "I never wanted to leave you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I didn't have a choice. If they found out about you, about the children, I couldn't risk it." Daniel's mind reeled as he tried to process everything. The woman he had loved, the children he had never known, they were all part of a dangerous game, one that could cost them their lives. But before he could respond, there was a loud crash outside, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching. Elena's eyes widened in terror. "They're here," she whispered. "You have to go. Now." But it was too late. The door burst open, and Daniel found himself face to face with the very people Elena had been running from. The stakes had just been raised, and the fight for the truth and their lives was only beginning. The door slammed open with a force that made the walls tremble, and in stepped 3 men, their faces obscured by shadows but their intentions clear. Daniel's instincts kicked in immediately. He stepped in front of Elena, shielding her and the children, his mind racing for a way out. But the men were quick, their movements precise and calculated. One of them, a tall figure with a voice like gravel, stepped forward and spoke. "You've been digging where you shouldn't, Mr. Carter. And now you've found something that doesn't belong to you." Daniel's heart pounded as he realized the gravity of the situation. These weren't just thugs, they were professionals, sent by the very family Elena had warned him about. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with tension, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. Elena clutched the children tightly, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. But there was none. They were trapped. Just as the men moved closer, the sound of sirens pierced the night. The sudden wail of police cars approaching the motel seemed to catch everyone off guard. The men exchanged quick, panicked glances before one of them barked. "We're out of time. Let's go." They retreated as quickly as they had arrived, disappearing into the night like ghosts. Daniel stood frozen, his chest heaving, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Elena collapsed into a chair, her face pale and her hands trembling. The children, wide-eyed and silent, clung to her, their innocence a stark contrast to the chaos around them. Moments later, the door burst open again, but this time it was Marcus, followed by a team of police officers. "You okay?" Marcus asked, his voice urgent. Daniel nodded, still in shock. "How did you know we were in trouble?" Marcus glanced at Elena, then back at Daniel. "I've been tracking you since you left the city. When I realized who you were up against, I called in some favors. You're lucky we got here in time." The next few hours were a blur. The police took statements, and Elena finally revealed the full extent of the danger she had been running from. The family she had crossed was not just powerful, they were ruthless, with connections that reached into every corner of the city. Elena had uncovered evidence of their illegal activities, evidence that could bring them down, and they had been hunting her ever since. The children, she explained, were the reason she had stayed hidden for so long. She couldn't risk them being used as leverage or worse. Daniel listened in stunned silence, his mind reeling. The woman he had loved, the children he had just met, they were all part of a story far bigger than he had ever imagined. And now, he was part of it too. As dawn broke, the motel was surrounded by news vans and reporters, all clamoring for a piece of the story. Daniel knew that his life would never be the same. The board of Innovitex had already called, demanding answers, and Claire had left a dozen messages, her voice a mix of anger and concern. But for the first time in years, Daniel felt a sense of clarity. He had spent so much of his life chasing success, building an empire, but it had all felt hollow. Now, standing there with Elena and the children, he realized what truly mattered. Family. Love. The connections that made life worth living. He turned to Elena, his voice steady. "We're in this together now. Whatever happens, we'll face it as a family." Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles, media scrutiny, and sleepless nights. The evidence Elena had hidden for so long was finally turned over to the authorities, and the family that had terrorized her was brought to justice. But the victory came at a cost. Daniel's reputation was tarnished, his company's stock plummeted, and he was forced to step down as CEO. Yet, he didn't regret it. For the first time in his life, he felt free. Free from the weight of expectations. Free from the lies and secrets that had defined his past. He and Elena began to rebuild their lives together. Slowly but surely, with the children at the center of everything. It wasn't easy, there were still moments of fear, of doubt, but they faced them together as a family. Claire, after much soul-searching, decided to walk away. She loved Daniel, but she realized that their paths were no longer aligned. In a heartfelt conversation, she wished him well, her voice filled with a quiet sadness. "You've found what you were looking for," she said. "And I hope it makes you happy." Daniel thanked her, his heart heavy but resolute. He knew that some wounds took time to heal, but he also knew that he had made the right choice. As for Marcus, he became a trusted friend and confidant, his sharp mind and unwavering loyalty proving invaluable in the months that followed. Together, they worked to expose the corruption that had nearly destroyed their lives, ensuring that no one else would suffer as they had the story of Daniel and Elena became a sensation. A tale of love, loss, and redemption that captivated the world. But for Daniel, it was more than just a story. It was a reminder that,